In this message, we'll be dealing with the subject of polygamy. That is polygamy legal or illegal according to the Bible? The message will be coming from 1 Timothy at chapter 3. We'll be starting at verse 2. The book of Timothy was written by the Apostle Paul to a young man whose name was Timothy. Timothy, when he was a youth, he was ordained by Paul, and he was also Paul's assistant. When Timothy had got old enough, the Apostle Paul had placed him as head over one of the main churches that were in Ephesus. Ephesus was a city in Asia Minor. So the Apostle Paul sends Timothy this letter with church instructions. Timothy was a convert of Christianity. His father was a Greek, and his mother was a Jewish Christian whose name was Enos. And his grandmother was a Christian whose name was Lois. And in verse 2, it reads, "A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife." That a bishop was the overseer of the church. The church back then, the doors were open from sun up to sundown every day of the week. And people who desired to be overseers of the church had more than one wife, where they had to constantly leave the services to go tend upon the needs of their wives. So Apostle Paul gives a rule regulation for the position of a bishop, that if one desires to be a bishop, he must be a man of one wife, that he wouldn't have to continually leave the services or shut down the services early or have someone cover him for the services. So he charges that the only person in the church is to have one wife is the person who desires to be in the position of a bishop. So if we turn over to the book of Genesis at chapter 4, verse 19, which says, Lamech married two women, one named Adah and the other Zillah. In Abraham, over in Genesis chapter 16, he marries his second wife, Hagar. Abraham was the friend of God. And then over in the book of Genesis chapters 29 and 30, Jacob marries Rachel, Leah, the two sisters, and the servant girls, Zilpah and Bildad. So if you go over to 2 Samuel chapter 2 at verse 2, it says, "So David went up there with his two wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel." So David was a man after God's very own heart, and David starts off with two wives. And then if you go over to 2 Samuel at chapter 5, verse 13, it says, this speaks of David. After he left Hebron, David took more concubines and wives in Jerusalem. So David starts off with two wives, and he marries more wives when he gets to Jerusalem. And then if you go over to 1 Kings chapter 11, we go over to Solomon, who God gave wisdom, but Solomon's heart was carried away because he married women with different religions. But King Solomon, who was David's son, he had married altogether 1,000 women. It says over in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 3, it says he had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. These are great men that were in the Bible, and they all had more than one wife. God bless.